All right, back to our top story, and today we're focusing on what does a judge make. Interviews will start soon for the Chief Justice of South Africa. The names of the 8 candidates that meet the President's criteria were announced today after calls for nominations. At the same time, 7 candidates are being interviewed again for 2 seats on the Constitutional Court bench. The first time around, the Council for the Advancement of the SA Constitution criticized the interviews for being political, and there was an agreement, so the reruns are kicking off today. So what criteria does the Judicial Service Commission use for appointing judges? To discuss, we're joined by the CEO of Freedom Under Law, Nicole Fritz. Nicole, thank you for being with us. So I don't envy these candidates. These interviews are known for being quite tough. And what we're seeing during the interviews for the Constitutional Court justices could give us a sense of what the process will look like when a Chief Justice is selected.
The process for the appointment of Chief Justice is quite different. And I think one of the things that needs to be underlined is that the 8 nominations, the names of the persons that have just been publicly released by the President, there's no suggestion that they meet the President's criteria, right? Those names are names that were received by the panel that the President has appointed from the public. So they have not been assessed against any criteria. The panel's duty is now to shortlist, to scrutinize those nominees and to provide a shortlist to the President. And from that shortlist, the President will then make a determination. He may, indicate that there is a single candidate that he would wish to see appointed as Chief Justice. It may be that he says there are 2 and that the JSC should interview them, and on consultation he will make a final appointment. Generally we've seen once the President has made it clear his or her nomination or selection for Chief Justice, that the JSC will then interview that person in order to assess them for their fitness for that particular office. And that is a different process from the one which we're seeing playing out today, where there are 7 candidates who are being interviewed and essentially vying for appointment to 2 posts that are available, that are being interviewed for at this present time. So it's a kind of competitive process. That is not generally the way in which the process for appointment of the Chief Justice plays out. It's not a competitive process. The JSC will interview them, the President's nominee, purely to determine that they are fit and proper and meet the criteria that one would want of a Chief Justice.
All right, let's start with firstly, what is the JSC looking for in a Constitutional Court judge? What are the criteria being assessed today?
Well, that's one of the difficulties. We haven't seen the Judicial Service Commission sort of come out and say, these are the criteria that we wish to see the successful candidates embody. In fact, Freedom Under Law, CASAC and Judges Matter recently put out a paper where we suggested that the criteria that the successful candidates should embody and should represent are ones of scrupulous independence. That there should also be a transformational ethos. There's a constitutional imperative that the judiciary reflect the race and gender composition of our country, but we think that transformation goes beyond race and gender demographics, that the candidates must, in their jurisprudential vision and in their lived experience, evidence a commitment to socioeconomic justice and to transformation. That the persons must have a judicious temperament. They must show self-restraint, humility, collegiality, and that and that there must be intellectual rigor and robustness. They must demonstrate they must be a lifelong student of the law, persons who show the ability to interrogate and certainly be familiar with the many complex areas of our law.
Yeah. Are you looking at the leadership capability of the acting Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, in the way he is chairing the commission and sort of steering the conduct of the interviews themselves?
Well, I have to say that having watched the interviews today, we haven't seen, I don't think, any of the kind of episodes that were most disquieting about the April interviews. And I mean, there were many during the April interviews. But I think one of the most upsetting episodes was that the then Chief Justice, who was chairing the proceedings, Chief Justice Mogoeng, in fact, put to one of the candidates, Judge Pillay, who in fact has not made herself available for interviewing this time round, and given her experience last time, it's understandable why that is the case. But he put to her, entirely improper, unfair questionings, referred her to events that she couldn't possibly respond to, given that she was not present, had no direct knowledge of. All to suggest, that in fact Minister Gordhan had acted improperly in respect of her.
Yeah.
And as I say, we haven't seen, any of those sorts of episodes today, although the interviews haven't been brought to a conclusion. But I think we do have a different chair, and a chair who has not acted in that fashion, but also a chair, I hope, who has spoken to the commissioners and reminded them of what their powers are and what their duties are, and will call them into line if they stray outside those parameters.
Yeah. We're running out of time, and I hope we can speak to you in future, really interrogating the names in the hat for Chief Justice. But on this point, before you leave us, are you disappointed that Judge Daya Pillay has excluded herself? Like you said, it's understandable, but a female judge who could have been in the running is no longer.
Very much. I mean, Advocate Alan Dodson, when interviewed this morning, spoke about the profound transformation that has happened, on the bench in South Africa, and that is absolutely true. I think we've done less well, though, in ensuring that our bench reflects the gender composition of this country, and that, in fact, is a constitutional imperative. So in April, vying for 2 seats on the Constitutional Court, you had 8 shortlisted candidates. 3 of them were female. Now you've got 7, and of those 7, only 2 are women. And I think, to the extent that those April interviews and the process around them means that we have narrowed the pool of eligible persons who might be appointed, eligible female persons who might be appointed, is a loss to this country. And so, yes, I certainly am disappointed that, the way in which that process unfolded in April means that we do not have Judge Pillay, to possibly consider for appointment.
All right, thank you for your time. That was the CEO of Freedom Under Law, Nicole Fritz.